Yesterday, I started to read a book, and this is the book here. Lorna Doone is the title of the book. I've been aware of the existence of this novel for many years, since I was a young man in my teens and 20s, but I'd never read it. No idea what it was about. So yesterday was the day when I started to read it. A book written by somebody with the name of R.D. Blackmore. There we are. And starting on page 1, I'm going to read just a couple of lines and then I'll explain to you what made an impression upon me. If anyone, the English I should say is somewhat antiquated because it was written when it was written, and I shall mention the date in a moment. The English is of a different style than which we enjoy today. If anybody cares to read a simple tale told simply, I, John Ridd, of the parish of Orr, in the county of Somerset, yeoman and churchwarden, have seen and had a share in some doings of this neighbourhood, which I will try to set down in order, God sparing my life and memory. That's it. In fact, that's just one sentence, the opening sentence of chapter 1 of this book. And what struck me was, it says, he describes himself, does this man called John Ridd, not the author was R.D. Blackmore, but the person giving this narrative at the moment describes himself as a yeoman and churchwarden. I thought, that might bode quite well. That seems like a good start. But it got better at the end of that sentence, because what he was saying was that he would try to set down in order, he would try to give a narrative, he would try to explain, give the story of things that had happened in the right order, God sparing his life and memory. Now, today, we would not have such an introduction, I don't suppose. Because today, references to God are either non-existent, or if they do exist, they exist in some sort of blasphemy, taking the name of God in vain. But here, no such thing, neither of those two. There is a reference to God, and it's giving credence to the fact that it is God who spares our lives. God gives and God takes away. And this is a correct use here of a reference to God. So he was saying, was the narrator, the person telling this story, a man called John Ridd, he was saying that he would try to give an account, set out in order, things that he was experiencing, things that he had experienced in the neighbourhood, some of the doings in the neighbourhood, some of the goings on. He would try and set them down in order, God sparing my life and memory. So with God's help, to bring things back to mind, he would give an explanation, he would tell the story. So God helping him and God sparing his life. And I found that very encouraging. The date when this was written, and I said I would refer to this, it was first published in 1869. So that is over 150 years ago, 1869. In those days, people were more aware of God. People led lives which were less sophisticated, not taken up with so many doings. There was not so much to do. Technology was not then as it is now. And so much of what we experience now, and so much of the things from which we say we benefit, we don't benefit at all, because they take us away from an awareness of God. They take us away from an understanding of God. And so much of our time is spent in busyness, in doing things, at the expense of being aware of God, understanding God, giving thanks to God, giving God credit for the things that we can do, and giving God credit for our very lives. Looking at Scripture, let me turn to the Holy Bible and want to read one passage of Scripture from the letter to the Ephesians, chapter 5. So it's the letter, or we call it a book, but it was actually a letter to the Ephesians, chapter 5, verses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the first 5 verses of Ephesians chapter 5, which begin with the word therefore, so I should probably start earlier, but I would have to start quite a long way back. But I'll just come in at verse 1. Therefore be imitators of God as dearly loved children, and live in love just as Christ also loved us and gave himself for us, a sacrificial and fragrant offering to God. But among you there must not be either sexual immorality, impurity of any kind, or greed, as these are not fitting for the saints. Neither should there be vulgar speech, foolish talk, or coarse jesting, all of which are out of character, but rather thanksgiving. For you can be confident of this one thing, that no person who is immoral, impure, or greedy, such a person is an idolater, has any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. My mind came to this particular passage because of the introduction, as I had mentioned, in this book, Lorna Doone, with reference to, and I've lost the page now, with reference to the narrator giving credit to God, God sparing my life and memory. And I'm confident that because this was written when it was written, it published in 1869, I will not find in this book any references to sexual immorality, impurity, those sort of things. Contrast that with what I would imagine to be many, many, many books these days, where there are overt references to the sort of things which actually Scripture prohibits for Christians. Why does Scripture prohibit such things? Why does God say don't make reference to such things, don't engage in such activity, don't do this, don't do that? Is it because God is a killjoy? Well, no, not at all. God is not a killjoy. Maybe, and this could be open for discussion, God is a killer of certain types of happiness, because some of the practices, many of the practices which the Bible forbids, give us happiness. They give us exhilaration for the moment, but it's not joy. It's not joy which is lasting, joy which is deep-seated. God is not a killjoy, but he does say, for our benefit, don't do certain things. Notice I mentioned there, he does say, for our benefit. And the things that we do so often as people, which give us happiness, they're not always for our benefit. And God knows this because he created us, and God knows this because he came to earth himself in the person of Jesus and experienced the things that we do. But that's going maybe off track onto another subject. I wanted to just briefly mention this book, as I have, because the beginning of it is encouraging to me, because I'm confident, as I said, that there will be no references to sexual immorality and impurity, etc. Vulgar speech, or in the case of the written word, vulgarity in the written word. So there we are. I like books that were written many, many years ago, because the style of English, I think, has a greater depth. It's more rich than the wording which we tend to use today, and hence I like reading. And I haven't read of any books by R.D. Blackmore before, but I'm sure I'm going to enjoy this one for couple of reasons. One of which the English is better constructed. It's a different style of writing they had in those days, but primarily because it's a good, clean read, and the sort of thing which Scripture tells us not to do, I'm sure that I will not find in this book.